Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another installment of Magic, Medicine, and Mysticism. I'm John Michael Salvato, one of your hosts, and with me in a few minutes, we will have Andrea Savar, this week's co-host, and a very special guest with us. And, you know, I'm excited about tonight's guest because I think that for many of us, we find ourselves in the midst of this pandemic struggling to really just reestablish some balance, some normalcy, sort of a homeostasis as we move and transition from a year of complete and total chaos into what feels like it's the coming of a new spring. And so both metaphorically and seasonally, we find ourselves in that place. And what if there were somebody who has the experience, the wisdom, and the knowledge to be able to help us get our minds around the necessity of decluttering, of reducing those things that become obstacles that stand in the way of where we can potentially go with our lives to live our best lives? What if there was an expert who could help us get a handle on that? Well, tonight we have one such expert, and we'll be back with them in just a moment. And we are back, and Andrea and Nicole, welcome. Hello. It's good to be with you guys. And just a reminder for our viewers, this is a live and interactive show, which is my reminder to turn the comments on. So if you have questions or comments, be sure to ask them. Try to keep them brief, no paragraph long comments because they won't fit on the screen. But if you have a question and try to, maybe keep it a little succinct, that will help us to be able to share your comments and ask Nicole or Andrea or myself. But tonight we have a very special guest, Nicole Kincaid. Some of you remember her from a year ago. Hard to believe. Next week will be a year ago that we did Witches on Lockdown. And I remember saying, we're going to, we'll do this. And then, by summer, everything's going to open up. Here we are a year later. And before we dive in, because I think this is such an incredible topic for us to unpack tonight, Nicole, tell us a little bit about your background and what it is that you do. I think people get so bored with hearing talk show, hosts reading a bio when nobody knows you better than you, and nobody could tell us what you want us to know better than you.
Okay, so so I have two different aspects to my work. I call them two sides to one coin, and one of the sides of the coin is the work I call stuffology. And that is my work where I focus on basically the things that you can see, what we traditionally know of as decluttering and organizing work, right? And the other side of the work that I do is called space clearing. Basically, I do energy work. I also do personal clearing sessions, but the bulk of my energy work with the stuff that you can't see is around spaces, around homes or offices or whatnot. But the reason that they're so tightly knit for me is because I basically started with my stuffology work. I started that practice, or I started having like an awareness around it, like all the way like into childhood. It was something that I did to self-soothe, that made me feel like I had control of something, and kind of like a very I had an interesting family dynamic. We moved around a lot and kind of unpredictable decision makers in the family, in the parental aspect of it. So I always naturally went to my space and would fiddle around with my things, and it just felt so good. So when I was a teenager, my stepmom had me go over to her best friend's house, who was going through this horrible divorce. And it was this amazing moment because I was like, what do I know about, like, how do I mean, like, I know how I would do this, but where she was at in her life was so much bigger than what I felt like I had, like, where I could meet her. But it ended up not being true, because I really was just like, I just need to be there for her. So I positioned like Kleenex boxes all over the house, and I just did what what we're now used to hearing of as witnessing, right? And I just noticed that this amazing process unfolded between me and this woman, and she went through deep releasing and grieving and sadness during this process, where I was basically, and then I did my genie work of like, because I love that and I'm built for it, and I don't ever, like, you can't outstump me when it comes to clutter. Like, I'm not afraid of any mess. And I'm like, woohoo! But what didn't make sense for me until about a decade later, because I never really wanted to take it to the next level. I've never been a part of any like organizing unions or whatever those NAPO, National Association. I mean, because I've just never been like, I was never drawn to do that. And one of the reasons was I would get really tired doing it. Like, I mean, not just tired because it was physical work, but I would leave a session with a client and I would just be like wiped out, like roll out of the car into my house. And I'm like, how do I love to do something so much, but I'm so wiped out? Well, then, in my late 20s, early 30s, I ended up going to Bastyr University here in Kenmore, Washington. And that was following a period of time in my life where I went through a health crisis where I literally didn't have any energy. Like now I think it's funny. Like, I mean, it's really not funny, but the energy worker who didn't have any energy was where I was at that time, right? But I wasn't an energy worker at that time. I was working in corporate America, but I left the job because I didn't have any energy. I mean, like, whole other topic, but I ended up going to Bastyr, learning about energy. And I felt like I had gone to Hogwarts and like learned, like, I had tools. I'm like, oh my God, that's why I get so drained, because I don't have like an exit strategy of like what to do with this. And I started learning how energy feels in my body and how to process it and not just like pretend it's not happening, right? And that's when I blended the two, and that's what I've been doing ever since.
And Bastyr is amazing. I mean, being in Washington too, it's incredible.
It really is. It's a really amazing. I mean, I just had the most amazing lineup of instructors and people. I mean, we studied everything from quantum physics to world religions to sound healing to. I mean, it was amazing. So it was a really neat program, but it helped me bridge these two sides of this area that I was just like built to work with in the realm of energy. Yeah.
Well, Angeline, stay stick with it, because we know if it's meant to be, it'll unfold for you. And let's kind of like dive in right there. Over the last year, Andrea and I have talked about this on the show a number of times, and we've a number of times said, this would have been a great show to have Nicole on, after, because we don't script it and things go where they go. So now we have you here, and talk what it's been like doing the work that you do and being a keen observer of the environment all around us. For you to see this transition from the year from hell to this sort of healing and mending process that, for me, I don't know, maybe you think differently, for me is kind of all about that release that gives us the space. I don't know about you guys, but the pandemic year, for somebody who is an absolute minimalist myself, I would have 90% less furniture and stuff in my house than we currently have. But relationships are about compromise. But the pandemic year, I started to become like a hoarder, like for me. Like there was, I'd say like, oh, hang on to that box because we don't know, because, if we need to ship something, I don't want to go to the post office. Oh, hang on to that. Hang on to this. Hang on to that. What have your observations been in this past year, Nicole?
One of the first things that comes to mind when you bring this up is that in the past year, I have never, ever seen in my whole trajectory so many people interested in clutter clearing in their own lives, like and interested in organizing. And I've seen more groups pop up around it and more articles written about it and more classes on how to do it. And I really have to give it, applaud people out there, because I think people are really going for it, and I mean, and the obvious reason for that is that they're stuck at home,
right?
It's like you can ignore clutter up to and disorganization when you plan all these fun things to do, but when you're literally not allowed to leave your house, it's like you get focused on, you get faced with having to deal with your interior, right? And one of my number one premises about organization and clutter and our spaces in general is they are really truly just reflections of who we are. There are bigger bodies, there are bigger spaces. And to the degree, and I say this non-judgmentally, that we are ignoring clutter, or that we're ignoring where we have systems that don't work for us, or we're ignoring where we're aggravated, or, I run into people all the time that, and clients too, of course, that they don't feel a home in their own homes. Like they have built up systems based on someone else, or, a book or whatever, and it doesn't fit who they are at all. They're like, I don't even know why I did that. And so people start to not feel home in their own homes, and that doesn't make sense, right? So with the pandemic and with people being home, there's been this almost this, kind of like the panic I heard in your voice, John Michael, around like, and I think people are really going for it. And I've seen more piles of junk out on the sidewalks in different areas, right? There's one time I was driving from the house over to Discovery Park, which I cut through Ballard, and there's like a really big Goodwill over there. And I'm not kidding you, on a Tuesday morning, like 3 weeks in a row, there was like 20 cars. And I was like, oh my God. But here's the thing that I really want to say about all that is that what I still hear, though, and what I still see out there that kind of breaks my heart a little bit is that people are still in a lot of judgment. And a lot of like right and wrong, and this is what we should do, and a lot of pressure around their systems. And that really, like I said, it kind of breaks my heart a little bit, because I really truly look at spaces as this amazing opportunity too, when we slow down enough to get to know who we are and why we have what we have. And if anybody's worked with me, they know that like one of my number one rules is you get to keep whatever you want to keep, because what that does is it gives you the permission to not have to give away anything that might mean something to you, or that you don't even know what it means to you exactly, but that it still has a resonance for you in a way that you need to keep it, that you need to hold on to it. You're not through processing that, but in our urgency to like get, clean up, or as you know, of course, so many people have had to make more space in their spaces, more space for their children. And it's just provided this tension and this strain and this, aggravation and annoyance around like trying to find more space in their space. Right. And it's been hard. But when I do talk to people, and when I offer a class, or when people call me up and we do a Zoom session or whatever, I just remind them, and I'm like, hey, it's just like, slow down, be gentle. Like, let's walk into this in a way where we're just being curious and wondrous about what we have, and try and try and tame and try and settle down that panic around having to like make these, sweeping, I mean, it's like, it's going to be there. It's okay. And there's strategies we can do around carving out spaces for what we're going to get rid of, for example. And, but the wave has been so big of people just feeling like they just need to like get it done, that I think that that too has provided like a cloud of frustration in itself. Yeah.
And I think, and for me, I'm the opposite. I love little things. But it's the harmony of it. I think that's the thing. Like, if it starts to be really chaotic and I can feel things kind of spiraling out, that's when I know, I need to do the clearing, do the purge. And so even though there might be like a lot of little things because of the nature of my work, being, an artist, so you have all these little things and you think, oh, wait, that box could be this, and the transformation of objects, but it can become really overwhelming. So that was the thing I always loved about your approach to it. It wasn't that you're just randomly clearing everything away. You're harmonizing within and without. And so because what one person would see as like minimal would be another person's, oh, that's too much. Because I've just loved, and you and I have worked together, not for that part, but for the energy work, which I'm really excited to talk about too. But I've seen your results with the decluttering, and it's amazing.
Thanks. I mean, one of the things that it is sometimes often a little bit challenging to describe to people, but there's this concept called 5-element theory, and it's part of where all of the Chinese, like feng shui and Chinese medicine and acupuncture and all of that came out of 5-element theory, right? Well, 5-element theory, there's 5 elements, right? And the reason I bring this up is because the 5 elements are water, wood, fire, earth, and metal, right? And there's like a circle, and it starts with water at the bottom, right? And then it goes around. And I won't go into deeply into this, but what I want to say about this is that each human being has a mix of essentially 2 of the elements that sort of are predominant in them, right? And the reason this is so important is because, for example, Andrea, you are very earthy. Like, you have a lot of earth in your system, right? And if you go it gives me chills. If you try and go in and take away earth people's things, they will feel like you're stripping them naked. Like, they're like, they need their things around them. They need you to ask about their kids. They need to nurture you. I mean, the bird, earth person. Now, Jean-Michael, you have a lot of fire in you, right? And so you might want to have stuff, but then you're going to get rid of it quickly, and then you might want to have it, but then you're going to get rid of it. And those are fire people, right? And so what if you're reading the book on organization, and it's written by, a wood person wood people can be very black and white and and like, organized papers here, and if people would spend a little bit more, spend time getting to know who they are and why they have what they have, and then honoring themselves to set up their environment so they make sense to them and their family. And you can do it within a family system, and it can get a little bit trickier. Truly, they would truly just feel so seated and so grounded and so loved in their own environment, right? And that does take a little bit more, consciousness, honestly, of just asking some hard questions, and not even just hard questions, but just like some questions that you might have to feel some stuff that's uncomfortable, right? And then, but just being honest with yourself, and it's a process. And I always say that, like, I call my work stuffology, but it's because decluttering an organization, those 2 words are a little bit stigmatized for me now, in the way that they kind of have gone into like the cleaning and tidying up realm. And where I head with people around my work is moving them more into like, who are you? and does this space like really reflect you? And if that means having 1,000 books, perfect. And if it means having like 10 books, perfect. But let's dig that up. Let's find out.
You know, I think that's what I so loved from the very first time we met. Even watching your class on pendulum work was that, and I certainly don't mean this in any disparaging way toward any other people in the decluttering space, in the world. But I would see some of the pop culture declutterers and recognize, maybe it's the anthropologist in me, but recognize that, oh, well, that makes sense from this particular culture where there is a balance of the five elements and where their approach, I mean, sparking joy means different things in different cultures. And you were one of the first people I've ever heard who's actually said that, like I, it's important that in the work that you do, you give that person permission to hang on to something that that still has meaning for them. Because if we take it away and then discover the meaning once it's gone, then how do you get back that joy? It's not, and people say, oh, it's, well, it's only stuff. Well, it's not only stuff. We can't make that clean line between who we are and the things that are the extended expressions of who we are. And for some people, it's their artwork. For some people, it's their music. For some people, it's the way that they design and decorate their homes, or their offices, or they're just the space around them. And I personally have a hard time saying this is where I end and where the expressions of me begin, because sparking joy for me comes in the form of having a bajillion books. But every time somebody comes over who says, wow, that sounds really good, taking that book and putting it in their hands and saying, here, it's yours. Like that, the joy isn't just from having read the book. The joy is like, I read the book, I love it, and now I get to give it to somebody. And and you nailed it on the fire thing. I think Andrea can tell, we were just talking before the show about somebody else in her life and me being very fire. And
you
we got
such a good match for each other, because the person's always gonna like settle down that like around that fire.
Here we have a comment from Stadana, says that's an eye-opener. I'm a water and air person, and figuring out what to do with that is very difficult. It's like, okay, I know that this is me, but what can I do with it and how can I thrive? I wonder if you can speak to that a little bit, Nicole, because I think the other thing I was just going to say, and Sadhana, thank you for reminding me, is some folks get a little confused between the astrological elements that are assigned to us and what we were all just talking about. I mean, I'm an Aquarian, that's an air sign. But what we were talking about with fire is something completely different. And so how do you work with people to help them find what that really means, and maybe to move outside the scope of okay, so my sun sign is an air sign, so that must mean I'm air. But yet the manifestations are that I just want to like give everything away or get rid of it, or
when I work with people, like, I mean, I'm not dry. It's not the frontal part. I mean, I'm not coming into like Andrea's home and I'm going like, oh, because I want to be present with people, right? But it's just so natural now because I've been studying 5-element theory for like 20 years, and the thing to say about that is, yes, there are different models and there are so many different spokes on the wheels and ways for us to get to know who we are. And I love astrology. And so I'm aware that I have, this many planets in Virgo or today, which makes me a great organizer, by the way. But that and I love beauty because I'm a Libra, my sun sign's in Libra, right? But what I'm talking about right here, right now is the 5-element theory, which is 5,000 years old. And it's just another model. It's another another way of like digging into information and figuring out who you are. And there's so many ways we can do that: personality tests, or all the different astrological stuff, or human design, or whatever you want to poke and start to unveil. But I love 5-element theory because it's pretty easy to get into, and there's a whole arm of 5-element theory that's Chinese face reading. And that's where I'm able to basically look at, Andrea and look at Jean-Michel and just see just from their actual faces. Like, it's so obvious, because they are so, I mean, like, if you got into face reading, you would just go down like the biggest rabbit hole ever. It's so fascinating because it's like, it's literally a map of like who you are, but there's these, you can even see in Jean-Michael's face that there's some readiness coming up, and he's got like a lot of what they call pokey bits, which and anything that like is a pokey, like a is a fire sign. And Jean-Michel just has like, you can see the light coming in his, like, you can see the light beams in his eyes. So, I mean, I'm not expecting everybody to like be able to just pick this up right away, but this is 20, but it is an entry point to get into. But as far as the questioner's question, I would love to know more about her, but I think the important, and it's like, it's a little bit hard because I can't see her environment and I can't see her, but I can say that what I heard in her comment was just a little bit of struggle maybe around like having what she has and then reconciling what to do with the things that it's very easy to get stuck. Yes. Getting stuck. Can I just talk about that for a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, because, getting stuck is probably like the number one thing that prevents people from actually doing or like getting into organizing and decluttering. And I think that people think that organizing and decluttering is going to be a lot easier than it is, but it's very Jack in the Boxy. So it's very like boing, and then it's like you've gone into the thing, but then you realize, oh, this belongs to somebody else. I got to give that to them. And then all of a sudden it's not just a keep or, I'm keeping or I'm giving away. It's like all these different subcategories, and we start to torpedo down with what is overwhelm. Okay. And overwhelm is really what torpedoes us. And then and then you're in your own soup. You're frustrated because you're getting flooded because the things that you're coming across are producing a chemical reaction in the way of an emotion. And then it's hard for us to get out of that. Right. So the antidote to that, and people always are like, what? And I'm like, it works. I promise. The antidote is this. When you are thinking about like, okay, I want to look at my environment, I want to make some changes, what you do is you scope way, way down. So you would never take, oh, I'm going to take this weekend and I'm going to do it. You would know. And you wouldn't even take a room. You would just kind of like just mindfully kind of like go around your whole house with your mind's eye and then lock into an area that is not like a 10 on the irritation, agitation. You want to give yourself a softball when you're starting, okay? So you lock onto that softball, maybe that's something kind of coming in like a 4 or 5 or 6. And then you're like, okay, so maybe that's the kitchen for you, right? Okay, I really want to get my kitchen handled. Then you go into your kitchen and you scope down even more. So you're not even going to take your whole kitchen. You're going to go around your kitchen and you're going to like, I can just do my refrigerator, not even my freezer. And if you think this is going to be easy, no problem, I'll have this done, then that you're on the right track, because that's like like it's not going to be, because you're going to get into it and that whole boing thing is going to happen, right? But if you just like satiate that part of you that just thinks like, like, no, that doesn't think, like thinks you're going to overdo, like get it. And you go into your refrigerator and you just do that. And you set a designated time for yourself. You say, I'm only going to spend 30 minutes on this, no more. And then you do it, you go through it. And when it's done, you're done. Like, you're like, okay, I'm done. And I'm putting it back and I'm leaving it where it is. I'm walking away from it. And then you give your system a break and you give your system to catch up to what just happened. And in that time, you can then take out like the bad food, or you can wash the stuff, or you can, clean up the mess a little bit, but you're not doing that hardcore sorting, ordering thing anymore after that. And you got to give yourself a break. You got to turn it off and go do something else, because it will take more time for your system to catch up with what just happened, and more than people realize. I mean, I'm telling you, like, overwhelm is so huge.
Well, great friend of the show, Jean Jerome, says Aboro Oboye, and very interesting discussion. Blessings and happy Sunday, and to you as well, my brother. What I think we'll do, because I know Andrea wants to really dig in on space cleaning and why not just energetic cleaning, how that has to go hand in hand. So we're going to go ahead and take a short break for a message from the Charter for Compassion, which I would point out is a perfect fit for this discussion we're having, because that whole last little segment just blew me away and made perfect sense for why today's objective kind of fell apart, because we were trying to eat the elephant in one bite. And so I think so that was well worth it, and I'll need a second or two to think about that. But this is your whole practice is a practice of compassion. It's learning to be compassionate to yourself and to those that you share space with. And so we're going to have this public service announcement, and when we get back, Andrea is going to dive in with some questions about energy clearing.
Love that.
The principle of compassion lies at the heart of all religious, ethical, and spiritual traditions,
calling us always to treat all others as we wish to be treated ourselves.
Compassion impels us to work tirelessly to alleviate the suffering of our fellow creatures.
To dethrone ourselves from the center of our world and put another there.
To honor the inviolable sanctity of every single human being.
Treating everybody without exception.
With absolute justice, equity, and respect.
It is also necessary in both public and private life
to refrain consistently and empathically from inflicting pain.
To act or speak violently out of spite, chauvinism, or self-interest.
To impoverish, exploit, or deny basic rights to anybody.
And to incite hatred by denigrating others, even our enemies.
Is a denial of our common humanity.
We acknowledge that we have failed to live compassionately.
And that some have even increased the sum of human misery in the name of religion.
We therefore call upon all men and women
to restore compassion
to the center of morality and religion.
To return to the ancient principle
that any interpretation of scripture
that breeds violence,
hatred,
or disdain
is illegitimate.
To ensure that youth are given accurate and respectful information
about other traditions, religions, and cultures.
To encourage a positive appreciation of cultural and religious diversity.
To cultivate
an informed empathy
with the suffering of all human beings,
even those
regarded as enemies.
We urgently need to make compassion a clear, luminous, and dynamic force in our polarized world.
Rooted in a principled determination to transcend selfishness.
Compassion can break down political, dogmatic, ideological, and religious boundaries.
Born of our deep interdependence, compassion is essential for human relationships and to a fulfilled humanity.
It is the path to enlightenment and indispensable in the creation of a just economy and a peaceful global community.
And we are back with Nicole Kincaid. You're watching Magic, Medicine, and Mysticism. And sort of as a segue comment into Andrea's topic that she wants to get into, Sarana says, I've also noticed that when I go on a cleaning spree for a day, I'll get sick. Do you think it's dust or an energy thing? I got to tell you, I love our viewers because they segue so easy.
Do you want to, well, Nicole, did you want to answer that one? And then we'll hop into
Well, I think of I'll just answer it quickly. I think of cleaning. Like, I love to clean, but I call it holy housework, right? Because I just feel like I go, like, it's no pun intended, but it's an alchemical process, right, of cleaning. And so, I mean, it sounds to me like this person who asked this question, like, I would bet you anything she is a highly sensitive person, right? And has a lot of in the 5 elements, I'm guessing it's metal, right? And metal people have to be really careful about how much they expose themselves to, but they also can be very persistent, you know, like the verb for metal is refine. So they're going to spend that time, but it can have a cost, you know, as far as what she's saying around not feeling well. And again, the antidote to that would be, you know, choosing to take those breaks during the day and get out in nature, or go eat something and have those stops in the record during the day.
And I just wanted to say, I think that really does lead into the idea of compassion for self and also your surroundings. And that was one of the things when we worked together on a few projects. I learned so many amazing lessons from you, because with one particular space that had a lot of issues, we had a tendency, the way that my family works, or the way that we were dealing with this very disruptive kind of traumatic energy that was in our particular home, where we would kind of push it out. We wanted to create a boundary. We wanted to move it. And there was a literal push and pull that was kind of happening in the space. And so when finally we were getting ready to sell, and we were just ready to, you know, close that chapter, and you came in to help, because it was, when you're in it, you know, you can't see the forest for the trees sometimes. We have our ways of doing things, but that doesn't mean we don't need outside help when something is that big. And when you came in, everything, when we were working together on it and when you were going through it, and I could see your body responding to what was happening in that particular area, and you shifted the entire process from one of a push-pull, of a poking, into this chaotic, traumatic energy that was kind of swirling. It was like you pulled out the bathtub plug, and like the whirlpool of calm started to kind of come in, because you were doing it from a place of compassion and healing, and not one of that constant pushback. So that was a huge lesson for me when I worked with you, and the way that energy just immediately shifted, and how you processed all of that. Also using your body, but that might be another topic to jump into afterwards. But can you tell us a little more about that? Because your process is pretty incredible.
Yeah, I spent a lot of years, and I say this really humbly, because I feel truly designed, like on a DNA level, on a soul level, on a body level, on a purpose level, for energy work, right? I just love energy. But learning about energy, when I started 20 years ago, ironically, like when we think of energy like the 5D and what's out there, and interacting with all the spirits and the stuff and the entities and the but the magic sauce in energy, from my perspective, is way more boring than that. And I don't mean that it's boring, but I mean it's very human. And by that, I mean that working with energy, for me, my methodology is all about sensing and feeling what's going on in an environment. And what happens is, a lot of people, when you start learning how to sense and feel and interact with what is going on, like basically standing waveforms, or what information or what memories are embedded and impacted in a home or a space, if you have any resistance to those strong surges of information, you are going to do this. Mm-hmm. Why? Because it doesn't feel good, and it starts to freak you out, and you think it's yours, and you take it personally. So the first easily a few years, I don't know, first 18 years, no, I'm just kidding. My work was all about what does intense fear feel like? What is like, and so I'll be in an environment and I'll be like, oh, wow, I'm getting like a really strong, like burning, like I'm like, has there been like a really strong regimen of prescription medicine in this room? Yes, and it's not because I'm psychic, it's because I've interacted with that information so many times that I know how it feels in my system to feel depression, sadness, anxiety, despair, all of the range of emotions and sensations and things that I don't know, like in earth energies and whatnot. But to get to your point though, Andrea, there is this notion in energy work. For example, if you the big thing that people always ask me about is ghost energy, right? And whenever I see people working or talking about, like when I see those shows and stuff like that, I just like, it makes me almost emotional because ghost energy is such a good example for how, when you were talking, Andrea, around that compassion piece, it's also about a witnessing and an entering into the field of that information and just sitting, just literally being with it. And what people do though is they encounter a strong vibrational force like a ghost, or even a stronger decibel of it, which we call a poltergeist. And a poltergeist is basically a ghost form that's been a ghost form for so long that it's lost the personality aspects of it, and it's just become extremely charged energy. And it's so charged and it's so condensed that it expresses ambiently too. So people can see things move around and whatnot, right? So what people do, what do they do when they go, exercise it, make it go away, push it. But we all know, like, what we resist persists, right? So the ghost energy or whatnot, it just backs off. And what does it do? It goes into it gets reinforced around its core identity, which is fear or sadness or despair or whatever broke off from the human being and had this, created this aspect of a person, made it earthbound, right? The craziest thing is, I've worked with a lot of ghost energy. When you, like a Venn diagram, it's in a space, and I come into a space and you just come into it and you hang out with it and you just breathe and allow yourself to feel everything going on in you. And just, I talk to, I'm like, hey, what's going on in here? And like, wow, it feels really like, usually the client is with me and I'm like, it feels like this, and tell me about your experiences and and I start to get some imagery or whatnot. It is like sitting with a small, scared child who is freaked out because they got lost at the park and they don't want anybody to touch them, and then all of a sudden you just sit down with them on the park bench and it's going to be okay, and you can feel them like settling down. And then in that very moment, that ghost energy in this case has the opportunity to choose to go back to oneness or wholeness or its bigger expression of itself. When that happens, this really freaks people out, discharges through a human body. Why? Because of the heart. I mean, the vessel of the heart is what moves, this energy and discharges it out of this stuck non-body form. And when that happens, I get full, like head to toe, full body chills, like, whoa, and I always cry because it is so, like, that ghost energy is so grateful and so, like, the charge is just like, whoa. And so the reason I say that is because there's this thing about hanging out with energy and just being patient and being very like not having an agenda, like not doing, and just feeling and sensing what is going on in the room. And when you do that, something like magic happens, because you all of a sudden, like, you just start to feel like northern lights, just this whole kaleidoscope of information like permeating through your system. And if you can train your body to just go with what it is feeling, the room and the space cannot help but shift and change and feel clearer, resonate differently. Like, people like will say all the time, God, it feels like air's moving in here now. Well, yeah, no shit. I mean, it's like, like there's so much energy burbles all over. And, you know, who knows why? That's a whole conversation. But
when I remember going into and being like, let's not paint anything until Nicole comes. Because even the light changes. Like, it's pretty, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Well, if I could, I just have to tell you, I'm a little blown away right now, because this was, if for all of the students in the Inner Alchemy Mystery School who are part of the Monday night open discussions, watch this show a second time, because that's tomorrow night's topic. There is a dovetail that you just beautifully presented and answered a question about how I was thinking about creatively presenting that tomorrow night. Even more so. So now I expect all of the students who love Angelina Serafina Tutacosa better be there tomorrow night, because she now has no way that she can't be part of this discussion tomorrow. So thank you, first of all, for that, because I really think, you know, that not just in clearing space, and I know we're going a little over time, I apologize, but we could probably sit here for like another 3 hours. I think that there's, you know, it's that microcosm, macrocosm thing, that as we're clearing the space, we're also learning how to work with energy in every aspect of our lives, by learning how to just sit with that energy instead of always having to fix it, always having to turn it on or turn it off or make it change. So many times that change happens when you just slow down and sit with that energy. And so, I mean, I think that was a huge gift to our viewers tonight to hear that piece of wisdom alone. I'm going to go ahead and put, I'm going to look at two more things. Yeah, I mean, Angeline just said she could listen for another 3 hours. We won't do that to you, but for folks who want to get in touch with Nicole, you could do that at NicoleKinkade.com. And I highly recommend that you spend some time on that site. There's some great stuff, great information on there as well. But if there were one big takeaway or a couple takeaways for the person who's really feeling, listening to what you're saying, Nicole, and saying, yeah, this is resonating with me, I need to take a next step, what would that next step look like? And don't be afraid if the answer is to get in touch with you, to encourage that, because that's going to be what I encourage people to do. But what would you say is the next thing to expect if this is starting to resonate with you and you're starting to get a little bit excited or a little emotional listening to Nicole speak, because this feels like something you've been looking for?
Yeah, I would kind of randomly pick the whole ghost thing because it's like such a natural analogy to make. And then halfway through, I was kind of like, oh my God, I'm totally preaching to the choir here. You know, like, oh,
nah.
But I mean, I think that here's the deal. Like, I'm kind of surprised I'm going to say this, but when I started learning, I did need to learn via a tool first, because I needed to see the demonstration of energy, and I didn't have a clear enough channel within myself. And so I would encourage people go learn how to use a dowsing rod and practice in your own home, or pick up a pendulum and practice in your own home. And I mean, those are like simple little things you can do. I mean, Andrea, I want to come over to your studio and I want to do like dowsing rod demo, because they're so fun. But I think that even just something I used to do in the very beginning is I have like a bell that has a very clear signal. And if you just even ding the bell and then just walk around your house with it, you can hear where it's fuzzy or whatnot. But if none of those really resonate with someone around, finding some sort of tool so that you are learning how to tune in to you, because you are really the tool, okay? But you might want to use an in-between starter thing, right? But if none of that, I swear to God, if you start clutter clearing, you will feel very, very different in your space. And start with something small. Like clearing energy 101 is like clearing, is just mindfully going through just pick something like your books, or pick like one drawer in your kitchen, or one drawer in your bathroom, and just see how you feel about that and go through it, and then just really take it in without being tasky, but just going through it.
Andrea, what have you got to add to this amazing discussion?
Well,
to take us out?
I just have to say, I highly recommend getting in touch with Nicole. I've worked with her on many different projects, and it's just always been such an amazing reunion of souls, if you will. She just, Nicole's wonderful, and I can't recommend her enough. And on the, if you're selling a house, basically, even my parents, we are all practitioners, and family line, we needed an outside person to come in and do it because we were just too close to it. So when my grandparents passed away and we had to clean out the house and do all those stuff, my mom and dad were like, yeah, give Nicole a call. She's got to come over and do her magic. And basically 2 hours later, there was an offer on the house. I mean, it was that, So we just, don't hesitate. Nicole is amazing.
And if your ears perked up when Nicole said, get a pendulum or a dowsing rod, Nicole has a class that's already recorded on working with a pendulum. So go to the website, get in touch with her, and she'll hook you up with how to get registered for that class so that you can take that on demand. But Nicole, I want to thank you. Andrea, of course, I want to thank you as well. This was absolutely, on so many levels, incredible. And I think I could speak for everybody who's watching to say that even in ways that people may not have expected, your presence, your witness, as you call it, is powerful medicine. So I want to personally thank you for that tonight, in ways that I just couldn't even begin to express when I've already run us 15 minutes over time. I'm just blown away and love you and appreciate you. And Andrea, I love and appreciate you. And to our guests that are watching, to our viewers that are watching tonight, I want to encourage you to, as we do at the end of every show, but more than ever, when we're talking about clearing energy in your life, return to the present moment and fill that moment with gratitude, because unless you can be grateful for what you've got, I can promise you that you're not going to be any happier with more, and that you will not feel the void of having lost something if that moment is filled with gratitude, because in that moment, that's where the potentiality opens up. That's where the abundance opens up, the healing opens up, the things that you didn't even know you were looking for. And so, again, I want to thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Andrea. And guys, we will be back here next week. And for all the students in our class, make sure you watch this a second time, because we're going to be talking about it some more tomorrow night. Good night, guys.
Night.
Night.